Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So first of all, I'm uh, very thankful to Women in Tech Group Kolkata for having this workshop and having me as a speaker. So actually, I have been also following all the sessions, and all other speakers are doing very good job. So trust me, guys. I mean, if you are new to LWC, maybe if you are planning to learn from it, then definitely this playlist is going to help you. I know there are already tons of study material available online, but what I feel is like every teacher or every speaker has its own different way to explain things. So you something here which is not available in, I would say, other tutorials. It might be possible, but anyways, let's begin the presentation then. So today we'll be discussing wire adapters and function. So as this is our seventh session, I think, and if you have come so far, so you must have already aware, like in LWC, we can use wire adapter and functions to fetch the data from the database from objects using Apex. Okay. So in today's presentation, I'll teach you like how you can get the data using wire adapters, why you should use it, where to use it, and how you can use it. Okay. So before that, if you're not following us on social media, then do follow us because I'm pretty much active on, I think, all of these handles. Okay, so maybe in future, if you're having any questions, so you can just tag me on Twitter or maybe on Instagram because I'm pretty much active on these two platforms. So you can just tag me there and ask your queries, and I would love to answer that. And this webinar is being recorded, so you will be getting the recording of it shortly. So, what you will learn today? So basically, I'll teach you what is a wire service, data in Lightning Web Component, how you can import reference to object and fields. Okay, and in wire, we are basically having two things. We can either wire function to property or function. Okay, so there are basically two things. And after that, I'll show you how you can pass parameters while wiring a function or a property. Okay. And at the end, definitely we'll be having some sample code snip. And so, it can help you to understand it better. Okay. So let's understand the wire service. Maybe you are already using it, but before using a function or before using a service, it is always better to understand a basic definition of it, like why LWC is preferring these wire services, why we are going to use it, why we are working in it. Okay, it is not like the example has suggested. So you have to work on this service only. There must be a reason behind it. Okay, so basically, the wire service is an immutable stream of data to the component. Okay. So whenever you will use wire service, it will provide you a immutable stream of data. Okay. If you're not aware about immutable data, so immutable data is a piece of information in a database that cannot be or should not be deleted or modified. Okay. Most traditional database store data in a mutable format, means the database overwrites the older data when new data is available. For example, let's say if we talk about an employee database, so the address information in employee database may overwritten each time, when someone entered their new address. Okay. In contrast, the database that store immutable data will not overwrite an old item when new information is available. They use various techniques to preserve the historical and current values of the data. So now there could be another question like, what could be what could be an example of immutable data? So let's say if you're developing a CRM for a hospital, okay. So in hospitals, basically whatever data they stored, they don't delete it. Okay, they just keep the data history for patients. So let's say whenever you will visit that hospital next time, they will just ask your name, search for the data. They will be having your history, like you came to this state, these were the prescription. Okay, so that was a example of the immutable data. So each value in the stream is a newer version of the previous value set. So whenever while will return the data, each value in the stream will be a newer version of the previous data returned from the same wire service. We call wire service reactive, reactive in part because it supports reactive variables which are prefixed with dollar. So whenever you will be using wire service, you must have noticed the reactive thing in wire service, like the parameters which are getting passed using wire service are having dollar sign before that. Okay. So basically, reactive variables can trigger reactive changes in your application. So it is like whenever you modify the value of a reactive variable, queries that depend on that variable refresh, and your application UI updates accordingly. So let's say if you're creating a wire service to maybe fetch list of accounts which start with a specific letter or maybe a specific category or maybe any condition. Okay, we can for example we can take any condition. So whenever, let's say if I have created a condition to search accounts by name, and whatever I will type, it should just show me those accounts which start with this name. Okay, so that account variable which is having that name is a reactive variable, because whenever it change itself, whenever it will change its state, the data will be refreshed automatically. Okay, so that's why that is the benefit of using the reactive variables here. All right, and make sure whenever you use reactive variables, you have to use a prefix or of dollar symbol. Okay. So if a reactive variable changes, the wire service provisions new data. One very important thing. That's why I have underlined it. I'm using word provisions. I'm not using request or fetch, because if the data is already available in client's cache, then we don't have to make the server request. So it is not necessary like each time we have to make a server request. We can get the data from the existing, I would say, existing cached data. So that's why, I mean, these wire service work so fast. That's why the LWC is, I would say, lightning fast now. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Before that, there's an example of mutable data and immutable data. As I have already explained you, the data which can be edited, deleted is mutable data. The data which cannot be edited or deleted, it is immutable data here. Okay, let's move to the next slide now. Okay, so next is syntax. Uh, to add the wire service, first of all, you have to import a wire adapter. So it would be better if I could just show you the example directly, because you will be able to understand it better using an example. But I mean, this is the traditional way, I would say, to explain something. Like first, you can just get some basic knowledge. After that, we can move to examples. So we'll be following the same way. So you can import wire adapters using the named imports index. So whenever you're importing wire adapter, you have to use import prefix first to use it, and later on you may decorate a property or function with wire and specify the wire adapter. Each wire adapter defines a data type. The wire service provisions an immutable stream of data, as I have explained it to you in previous slide. The data is not guaranteed to be the same even when the adapter config object contained is same. So on the below example, you may notice like here we are having cache data. So this is an example of the local state management system. And why local state management is very important, because if you are having cache data locally, then in that make the request again and again to server. So it will basically make your application little faster, and that is a very important key point in an application. So let's say you have built a huge CRM, but if it is slow, then there's okay. So if you are having cache data and reactive variable, so the result will be good local state management, what we are doing in LWC right now. As we are storing cache data, we are having reactive variable. So whenever the variables change, the data will be refreshed automatically, and we don't have to make the server calls again. So that's how we are doing the good local state management. So this is an example of the syntax. So I have just created it just to show you like the name of the identifiers. So the first thing will be to import the wire adapter. So you can just import it like this. with your lightning element, you can just import wire here. Okay, and then later on you have to import the functionality also. Let's say if you're calling a lightning UI API, maybe you are calling a apex function, so you have to import them as well, and that will be, of course, will be using in wire. So here on the line number 2, I'm importing get record from UI record APIs. Okay, so first of all, you have to use the keyword import. Then you have to use the name of the identifier, which is get record. Let's say in case of Apex, it will be the function name. Okay, so this is get record from. Then you will be using path where we are importing it. So for the Lightning UI record API, this is the path, and basically the path which contains the identifier. In case of Apex, we will display path like the Apex which contains this specific function or identifier. Okay, and the same, let's say if you're importing fields, if you're importing object using the schema, so you can use same import keyword. Then, like on line number 3, we are importing a field from. Then the path to that identifier, I mean, if you're importing field, so the path will be the object, correct? So that's why we are using here Salesforce schema account.name, because this is the path of this field is basically the name field of that account. After that, you can use the wire service using the @prefix, and you can simply use it like @wire. Then the name of the identifier will be here again. And as I have mentioned already, in the case of Apex class, the name of the identifier will be the function name. Okay. And here with the identifier, we are passing few parameters here. And if you will notice in parameters, so we are using a dollar symbol here. So this basically, this is the reactive variable. Okay. So this is the syntax of the reactive variable, and we are passing fields also. So basically a configuration object specific to the wire adapter. uh, I would like to make it like this is basically the configuration of this wire adapter, like how this wire adapter should act, I would say. So this is basically configuration. Configuration object property values can be either string or reference to objects and field imported from Salesforce schema. So here, this line means like here instead of this fields account name field, you can just directly use the account dot name as well. But it is suggested by Salesforce whenever you are using the wire service or UI record APIs, it is better if you will directly. I mean, you should not use like account name directly. Instead of, you should then use it. The benefit of importing it first then use it is that when you import a field in this basically the JavaScript part of a Lightning component, when the field in the controller, so the backend locking that field to be so basically the same way you may have seen a field is having reference in Apex, Salesforce will not allow you to delete that field, that reference. Same works for the Lightning Web, but only if that field has instead of having the name directly. Okay. At the end, there or either one could be here. And here, a very important question could be, when should wire to property and wire as function? Answer of this is very simple. Let's say if you would like to use the or error directly with main functionality, then in that case you can use wire. And if you would like to make some changes in the data, or would like to perform some other things as with the data, let's say the data, I would like to show a toast message. Okay, so in that case, some, if you don't need to change, you can use property. So these were the basically the difference between them, and we will be learning more about it. Next slide. So decorate a property with wire. So wiring the property is useful when you want as it is. as I so whenever you would like to this, be the format and other things. If you are it, so you can just use wire. If the property decorated with wire is used as an attribute in the template and its value change, the wire service provisions the data, trigger the component to render the property private reactive. So when the wire service properties, so those will be the private properties, but reactive will let's say if we are wiring a service and maybe some reactive parameter changes itself, so it will automatically refresh the data on the UI as well. Okay, so that was why, and of course, why with. So the next is decorate wire. Okay, I have not explained this in because for the same syntax you are having on the previous slide as well. Okay, decorate a function. Wire function is useful for logic whenever new data is provided on an error. The wire service provisions the function and object with error and data properties, just like the wire. So return type in wire property or in uh, so basically both are having error object and data object, and you can have the error from them. But to perform any other action, in that case you use the function. Now this is the syntax of a wire function. So it is, I would say, and, on the other hand, it is very much different. What I think. So the header part will be same. The top 2 or 3 lines may be the then you have to import the functionality, of course. So in this case, in this screenshot, basically, I'm importing a function from account controller is by Apex class. So I have used that function in account.getACC list. This is my identifier name, which will be used in this wire function. Okay. So this identifier name can be similar to this, like you can also have get ACC list here. It is up to your requirement. Keep it just to sure just purpose to make sure like what I'm using here is this keyword, not this one. Okay. So here, wired function, you can simply use the wire. And then in brackets, you have to pass the identifier name. It is also similar to that wired property thing. The identifier name is cat account list. And then underneath that, we are just wiring the error and data in this wired account. Okay. And if it returns the data, we are assigning the data in accounts and we are assigning the undefined basically in error. And if it returns an error, we are assigning to this error property and we are assigning undefined into the accounts property because either it will or it will return error. So let's move to the next slide quickly. Okay, the next is a very important thing, which is bind property or function. So to bind a parameter, it is very, I would say, easy in wire thing. You just have to use the reactive thing to follow the proper syntax and it will automatically show you the result. Okay. So this is the example I was talking about previously as well. So this example in this screenshot, basically what I'm doing, I'm passing a keyword to my to find a spell. So let's say having 100, I have to within them for a specific name of account. So for that, I can create a reactive variable which will be passing to that apex. That variable condition in the
Hi,
circle.
Kapil.
Yeah. So
Sorry to interrupt you. Your voice is breaking a lot. Uh, I think your internet connection has some issues. We cannot hear you in case you're speaking. Guys, let's just give him a minute. He'll come back. Yeah, sure, sure. Take your time.
Is it better now?
Yes, it's quite better. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so in between the voice. I mean, this is the new normal, I would say, the work from home thing. So, if you missed anything during the presentation, so you don't have to worry because at the end, I'm having examples as well for all of these three explain all of these three screenshots. So you don't have to worry anything. I will just explain everything again. Basically, these three examples. Okay. So let's start with this bind wire with parameter. Okay. So here in this example, I'm just passing a specific keyword to my list of accounts where we are just searching a name from the account thing. Okay. So let's say if I'm having hundreds of records, okay, and I'm passing a name there, and we are just searching a specific record or maybe the records which start with this specific name. So in this, I mean, we can use the wire adapter with function thing. Okay, now let me show you an example of these three things. So in today's example, we'll be seeing the wire with property thing. Okay, I'll show you how you can wire the property. And after that, we'll be having the wire with function thing. And definitely I'll show you a live example of that as well. And at the end, we'll be having this bind wire with parameter thing. Okay, let me show you just a second. Okay, let me just open my Visual Studio and okay. And guys, one more thing I would like to share a quick tip here. So let's say if you're working with Scratch org and as you're aware, like the limit in Scratch org is maximum you can have it for 30 days, correct? So basically I'm doing it personally. That's why I'm sharing with you. So whenever you're creating a scratch org, I'm adding a prefix in that scratch org. So let's say if I have created a scratch org on 1st of January, so I will add 30 days in it and I will just note in the scratch org name like it will end on 30 of January. Okay. So basically like for the same you can see here like this scratch org will be end on 12th of March. So this could be a very good tip, I would say. So you would be aware like when it is going to expire, because while creating a new scratch or pushing all of your code in it can take a while, and it could happen, just in between, uh, maybe before some important meetings also. Like what will happen, like let's say if my scratch org just expire right now. Okay, because right now like I'm aware it is not going to expire, it will be expiring on 12th of March. But if I'm not aware about the expiry date, so it could take a little while to create a new scratch org, then pushing all the code in it. So yep, that was just a quick tip. So let me just open it quickly. Okay. All right, so in my this account, and these will be the three examples of wiring a service. So the first one is wired with property. So let's start with the first one. Okay, let me go back to the. So this is the first example where I'm wiring accounts with, because I'm not having any change here. I just need to display the data as it is. Okay, syntax is pretty much similar. This is the same example I've shown you in the slide. So maybe if my voice was breaking at that time, so you may just, you know, so basically I'm importing that get ACC list from account controller, and my identifier name is get account list. And here I'm just simply wiring get account list in this account. Okay. And on the HTML side, here's my HTML. I'm using it in a for each loop, and I'm using data, and I'm the account here. So this was an example where you would like to use the data as it is. Okay. And this is the result of that wire property thing. Basically, we are getting list of account. Okay. Now, if you will see to the next example, which is wired with function, and you will notice like we are getting the same result here as well. And I would say, of course, you will be getting the same result. But the thing is, the functionality could be different. Maybe if you need to show, as I said, uh, custom functionality before or after getting the data, in that case only you should use the wire function. But still, as I'm having the similar account, because it's the same org in which I'm having three of the examples, so the same data. So next is wired with function. Okay, let's move to the next example, which is bind wire with function. So here also, if you will notice the apex, so it is pretty much similar. I just printed error here. So HTML part is pretty much similar, like we are having for each loop, the same item, but here we are using account directly because we have assigned the data in account. And in the wiring with property thing, we are not assigning anything. Okay, we are just assigning data or error in account. So that's why there we have used account.data, but here we are using directly accounts, because on backend I'm having a parameter account, which in which we are just assigning the data of that wired function. Okay, let me move to the wired function now. So here basically we are importing the same function from the same apex. Okay, and we are having the same identify name as well. But here we are having two additional parameters like accounts and error. Will be storing the data, and error will be storing the error only. And here we have used the wired account thing where we are storing error and data. Okay, if it returns data, so in this dot account we are passing data. If it will return error, so in this dot error we will just assign the error. Okay, so that's how you can just wire the function. And I mean, if you need to make some specific changes, maybe in case of error, I wish to maybe show a toast message, or maybe in case of data, I would like to send an email. Yeah, so it is possible. So there could be any situation, so you can just use them based on your requirement, but at the end you will be getting the same result if you use the same function. Okay, and the next example, pass parameters in the wire service. So this is the same example I was talking about in the presentation thing. So here I'm having list of accounts. Okay, and here I can pass the name, or maybe the name contains by this list of account. Okay, so let's say for example, let's say if I type my name here, so when I will be typing my name, you will notice the data on this list is getting updated simultaneously. Okay, so let me just try here. See, so the data in the list has been updated. And let's say if you will type a common word uh, which is having more than one record. So let's say if I type add, okay, add is only one. So what we can do is we can type ACC, because I can see test account and sample account for entitlement. If I will type ACC, so it will return two records, because these two records are containing the ACC thing. Okay. Now let me show you the function. So this is an example. This is a very good example of with parameters. So here, basically, we are wiring the same service with a specific parameter. Okay. So here I'm using search key, and search key is basically having the value in the text box. So for that input, I'm having handle on chain function, and on handle on chain, I'm just assigning the typed characters in that input box to this search key. Okay, and as this is a reactive parameter, guys, so this is, I would say, a very good example of reactive also. So whenever we are changing the text, so the reactive variables is changing again and again in this wire service. So if you'll notice, we are not calling that wire service again and again. Okay, so here identify
syntax use the identifier name, comma, curly braces, then this should
be the word, this should be the keyword which is which you are having in your apex. So let's say if in my apex I'm having name as a parameter, so here I would write name. Okay, so just don't get confused between this keyword. Okay, this is the parameter name in the apex. So to make it a little more easier, let me show you the apex as well of account controller. Okay, so this is the account controller, and here it is, find ACC list. So just focus on these few lines. Okay, notice I'm having a string parameter and the name is keyword. So that is the only reason using keyword there, because I mean this is the only way it can identify like to which parameter it should send the data, because of course in a function we can have multiple parameters. Let's move to that one.
in this keyword thing, and
As
that is a reactive thing. So
every
every time you will change
the variable, the text or the data in the variable, it is going to change the state of this wire function. So whenever you will type something, or let's say if you will make it empty, so it will just
it will just
get
get
you
the
the
new
new data based on the reactive parameter. Okay, so guys, these were the three examples of using a wire service. And for wire service, either you can wire it up to a property or you can wire it up to a function. Okay, and the third example was to pass some parameters. All right, so I think that is it for today, guys. And wire services, these are the only three things which can be used as wire. So thank you so much, and now I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, Kapil, for such an insightful session. I don't see any questions yet. Let's give the audience a minute or so that they can post out their questions.
Yep, guys, please post your question, otherwise misunderstanding, like I will be that much of code like the audience is not having a question. So please post your question, or maybe I mean
functionality. Any questions?
Okay, can you please explain the wire using property again?
wire using property. Sure, no problem. Okay, so let me explain it in this way, or let me just open the example directly. So this is an example of wire using property. So the thing when you use it is when you need the data as it is. Okay, in that case you can use wire using property. Otherwise, if you would like to make some changes in the data or do any action before or after the data fetches, then you may use the wire function. So to get started with wire with property, the syntax is pretty much similar in both of them. You just have to import the that needs to be the functionality. I would say you may use UI record API and import it using wire. Have
In this example, I'm using scene, and this is my identifier name. And identifier name can be same to this thing, the function name.
Okay. So you just have
With
the wire
that you can put a parameter to fetch the result and add.
Okay,
So that's how you may use the wire function. But make sure like you don't have to make any changes
to the data or maybe you don't have to perform any action to fetch before fetching or after fetching the data. All right. So in that case, only you should use the wire with function thing, wire with property thing. Sorry.
Okay, the next question is how to update record using wire adapter.
So if you would like to update a record, then in that case, you should not use wire adapter. You have to use imperative apex for that. So basically, okay, now when this question has came up, so let me just explain a little bit about imperative apex and wire adapters, like how they goes with each other. So basically, whenever you would like to do something on the load of a page, maybe okay, let's say if a page is loading and you have to show, or maybe you have to get the data and you have to sort it later. So in that case, also you can wire the data. But if you're talking about update, so update will be an action on a buttons click. Okay. So whenever you need to perform on a buttons click, in that case, you have to use the imperative method. In the imperative method, the syntax is a little bit different. I mean, we are not using the reactive variables there. Okay. So there you can just call it directly as a function in JavaScript on a buttons click and use it. So that will be the imperative part, not in the wire thing.
Okay. The next question is how can I retrieve account name in NWC from contact list if account name is selected in contact SOQL? Yesterday I tried with dot property but getting undefined, but I can see account name in response.
Okay, if you're able to see the account name in response, maybe you can fetch the account dot data directly. In that data thing, you will be having everything. And also, if it is a join query in SOQL, maybe you are trying to get accounts in contact in a single query, then you may directly use the data dot field name. I think definitely it will be returning data. If you're getting undefined or something, I would suggest one thing: just try to just do it JSON.stringify and then pass your data, and let's see if you're getting the account name there as well.
Okay. While calling the method from wire decorator, you had passed keyword value and it was appended with dollar sign. Can you explain this?
Sure. So that was the example of the passing parameter with wire, and it is with dollar sign because it is a reactive variable. The benefit of using reactive variables are whenever you will use the reactive variables, and let's say if the value of the reactive variable gets changed, then it will automatically update the data over the UI. So the same way we were using the reactive variable here as well. So whenever you will change the value here, it will update the UI automatically. So we are not making any server side request. So this is basically getting all the data from the cache memory itself. So that's why we have used a dollar sign, because like this is the syntax of using the reactive variables.
Okay. Can we call wire using wire? Like wire inside wire?
No, you cannot call wire inside wire because each wire method will return only a single data type. So no, you cannot.
Okay, I think. Okay, we have one more question. If we are writing wire method and passing three parameter, so will this wire method will be called three times?
See, let's understand it like this. If you're calling a function, let's say that function is having 10 parameters, but still you will be calling that function only once. Let's say if I'm having a function and I will just do it like this, function name, and then I will be passing the parameters here. Maybe the first can be string, second could be an integer, third could be again a string. So is it going to call that function three times? Of course not. This will be that function only once, and in that function, wherever you will be using those parameters, so it will be added there as well. That was a good question, by the way.
Okay. How to decide when to use imperative call or when to use wire?
So whenever you have to perform an action, in that case, you have to use the imperative thing. Wire cannot be called itself on the click of a button. So whenever you need some action on buttons click, or maybe after a specific thing, maybe you would like to call a function in JavaScript, and then also you need to trigger your Apex part. So in that case also you can use the imperative thing. Yeah.
Um, What if I am changing all the like the question that was asked, if we are writing via method and passing three parameters. So what if I'm changing all three values, variables one by one?
So see, if you will change those three parameters one by one, but still your function, the data in your function will be same. So let's say if I talk about the same example, for now I was just having account. Okay. So let's say if I'm having account name and maybe city, and the third parameter could be, let's say, street address. Okay. So let's say we are having three parameters here. So but at a single time you will be typing only in a single text box, correct? So let's say if you will type in the name thing, let's say if you are having 100 accounts, okay, and you are typing on the name text box first. So when you will type on the name text box, it will just call that wire function, okay, and it will sort the data, or it will modify the data based on the first input selection only. Then if you will type in the second parameter, then the same wire apex will be working, but this time that wire apex will be working with two parameters. Let's say in the first parameter we are having value abc, okay, so get all accounts where the name is abc or name contains abc. So when you will type data in your first, modify
the
the
name.
name, but
When you will type data
in
in the second input, which
would
would
be
be
street
street
address
to three.
so now two
Two
parameters
parameters
in your
wire
wire apex, so you're refreshing
based
with
on
these
these
two
parameters
parameters.
where
Name
name
is equal to abc and the street is equal to 123, and the same goes with city as well. If you will change the city, then in that case you will be having three parameters, three separate parameters into that wire, and that's how the wire will be working the similar way.
Is called first when we used both connected callback function and wire function.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think connected callback will be call itself first, because in connected callback, it is basically initialization of the component. So for that, if you have followed my previous session, which was on the life cycle of the component, so in that I have already explained this thing. So it is completely depend on the life cycle, and connected callback works as of a component.
How can call Apex call out from LWC.js? I mean, calling REST call out record page detail page button.
Sorry, can you please elaborate the
The
question?
question is where wait for her to reply. Okay, let's take the last question. Do we need to pass the parameters only inside we can pass them by comma separated values?
So basically, you can pass it with the comma separated values as well. But I mean, the format should be same. Like first, you have to pass the parameter name, then the value, and the parameter name should be similar to your apex parameter thing.
Perfect. I think that ends up the day for today. Thank you so much, Kapil, again for such an insightful session and clearing all the doubts. Thank you everyone for joining us in.